This is going to be another example looking at risk and relative risk. So in this case, we're going to look at a study with 525 pregnant women. We've given data about the duration of their pregnancy. So we have preterm and full term, meaning they had their child early or they went to the full 9 months for full term. And we're comparing women who did a significant amount of exercise and women who did no exercise at all. So what is the risk of a preterm birth? So this is just our normal probability and preterm birth. So this is out of everyone, because they're not telling me that they're specifically exercising or not exercising. So out of everyone, the risk of a preterm birth. Preterm birth, those are 48 out of 525. And that's going to get us 0.0914. What is the probability the woman who exercises significantly will have a preterm birth? So what is the probability that a woman who exercises, this is using the language that we would see in those other problems like given. So this is the probability out of women who exercise, whether or not they have a preterm birth. So out of women who exercise significantly, which is 275, out of that group, how many of them have preterm? And that's 30. So here I have 0.1090 for my probability. And they could have also phrased that question as, what is the risk of someone who exercises significantly having a preterm birth? Okay, next question. What is the probability that a woman who does no exercise, so that a woman who does no exercise, that's given to us, we know that. That becomes the out of category. And so out of the women who do no exercise at all, which is 250 of them, the risk of a preterm birth for that group is 18. So 18 out of 250 is 0.072. The next step for us is calculate the relative risk of a preterm birth for a woman who exercises compared to a woman who does not exercise. So if you're not sure which way to put this fraction because you're not sure about which one's the risk factor and which one's without, do it in the order of what they kind of say here. So the relative risk of a preterm birth for a woman who exercises, that's going to be the top, compared, if you want to think about it that way, to the bottom, which will be no exercise, the bottom of the fraction. So the risk for someone who does not do exercise is 0.072, which is what we already calculated there. And above that is going to be the risk for women who do exercise significantly, 0.1090. And if we put that into our calculator, we get 1.513. So what does this mean? Here's where we have to get the interpretation of what the relative risk means. So we would want to write this out in a full sentence. And remember, if a relative risk is bigger than 1, it means it's going to be a more likely situation. So this is increasing risk because it's bigger than 1. So let's figure out what to say here. What exactly is the risk that we're looking at here, the factor? We're comparing exercise to not exercise. So we can say this means women who exercise during pregnancy are 1.513 times more likely to have a preterm birth compared to women who do not exercise. So when you write out your statement interpreting it, you really want to be specific. So again, here I need to talk about who I'm comparing. Women who exercise compared to women who do not exercise. and I'm being clear about whether that 1.15 times more likely or less likely. In this case it is bigger than 1, so it's going to be more likely. So we've got that information. Now keep in mind this doesn't mean you absolutely shouldn't exercise when you're pregnant, because the difference between these is that, well, here we see that almost 10% or almost 11% of women who exercise have a preterm birth, and here the difference is 7%. So the difference between those in terms of percentage is kind of only about 3 or 4% difference. But because the risk is pretty small to begin with, we're increasing it by 1.5 times. But it's still a relatively small risk.